Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:02. We're going to start with roll call. Kate Massanati,
Here.
Paula Whitford, Michelle Brousseau, James Restivo,
Here.
and myself, Carol Vetter, is here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in a moment of silence in remembrance of Antimo Andy DiBiasio III. Thank you. Our hearts and thoughts are with the family. Do I have a motion to seal the minutes of executive session?
I'll make a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. There were no votes taken in executive session. Next, we'll have comments from the community. And we don't have anybody that signed up, so we'll move on. Next is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Yeah, you want
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move item 6D from school committee business to head of the superintendent's report on the agenda for tonight.
do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Thank you. This item will be taken care of by our Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Proctor.
Good evening. Green button on. We're good? Okay. Okay, our food service contract is up this year. I talked to Jennifer Goodwin with the state. The state has submitted their RFP. It is in the review status. It has not been released to bid yet. Once that is released to go to bid, then the process will be to release it. Companies will bid on it, probably get the bids back about mid-March. I asked her what would happen if they did not get any bids. She says that the contract will then roll forward, and then we can meet with our food service company, which is Chartwell's, and we will go over our own in-house contract with them and draft a one-year extension.
So essentially, the general timeline is been pushed back a little bit. RIDE is a little bit late. My understanding is that normally they would have had their RFP that we would have been able to review, that we would have put out there, that we would also be able to take a look at, see who the vendors were, and potentially add any items that were unique to our situation so that we could then put out our own bid or go out to bid with our own unique one. However, given the we also have transportation. We don't know what the governor's budget is yet, which isn't, but to add some level of certainty to see the committee's interest of, rather than trying to play catch up, if it was within the committee's interest for us to pursue what a one-year rollover extension of the existing contract with our food service provider would be, so that we would then have a year to then take a look at the state, make it our own, and get some sort of cost certainty potentially in the crafting of FY 27 that we currently don't have in regards to this, in regards to the food service contract. And so we just wanted to bring it forward to you that, again, the contract is up. We did expect to go for a multiple year bid to put out that RFP. However, that timeline has been delayed, and given everything else, we weren't sure the committee's appetite to potentially look into what might be the conditions of a one-year rollover. So we wanted to bring that forward to your attention.
So would this just extend the current contract for 1 year?
We would look to see if they were amenable to that process, of which preliminary conversations said they, they didn't see any reason why they wouldn't be, but we wouldn't take any action again without consulting the committee first. And that's why it's here before you this evening.
I have two questions for you. The first is, in general, I was under the impression, clearly might be wrong, that there were only like 1 or 2 food service groups that are out there. Is that not the case? Can you, if we went out to bid, there's a selection of different groups?
There are a plethora of food management companies that would service us if they decided to bid. So you have Seduxo, Chartwell's, Airmark, any of those. Those are just the main big ones. There are smaller ones, not to be confused with your food service provider.
So then my next question would be, my understanding is that you have familiarity in previous lives and of navigating these waters. And I'm just curious what your personal opinion might be on where we are right now and what would be in the best interest of us at this moment.
So since I have come on board, I have met with Chartwell's every month. Mark Roy is our head of our kitchens, and he brings in his boss, Ryan Hurley. Both of them have been meeting with me on a monthly basis. We have a very good rapport. Any issues that come up, for example, one of our freezers has to be repaired, and Mark went above and beyond and reached out to another school district to see if we could house our food there over the weekend. It's been, in my opinion, really great. They've been extremely easy to work with. I have worked with 2 other companies who were extremely difficult. And this is a breath of fresh air as far as I'm concerned. I don't hear any issues with any kitchen personnel. I don't hear any issues with any children having any issues with the food. And if they do bring it to my attention and say, we decided to change this on the published menu. Just want to give you a heads up.
As a former worker of Chartwell's, I can tell you that I get a lot of those complaints. The women that work, especially in this building here, have been here for decades. And they started out like I did, working for AMOC, and then Chartwell's bidded out the contract. They came on board. At the time, I was working with Mr. Jones, but one of the reasons why I left was because the food production started to go downhill. I have been out of that position now for well over, I don't know, 10 years, close to 10 years. And I still talk to very many of the food workers in this particular kitchen here. And they're not happy. They're not happy. So, and when asked why they are not bringing that up, and, bringing it to the attention of Mr. Roy. Their statement is that they don't want no retaliation. They don't want to lose their job. So, what you're hearing, what I'm hearing is two different things. However, I do have children in the school district. And for the past several years, my own child has been telling me that the lunch program isn't any good. Like they're not happy with their food choices and the presentation of some of the foods that are being presented to them. And, I even had conversation with Mr. Roy over Zoom when he first got on to bring that stuff to his attention. He alleged to be trying to work on it and not much has changed. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Although I will be going to the different schools to visit the lunchrooms, either at breakfast or at lunch. Because I did that in my prior life. We were self-opt in my prior life. I took care of 20 districts. I had 150 food workers. So in
That-
terms of going and explaining the food, as you know, there are two ways that you buy food. One is from your brown box funds, which is USDA approved funding. The other is your fresh fruits and vegetables grant. And your third one is your farm to market. So depending on how much money you get awarded in your brown box will depend on how and what kind of meat you buy. Now, some of your meat is limited. If you look at your meats, you're going to pay top dollar for boar's head compared to what you paid for Jenny O, compared to what you pay to Hansel and Gretel. Then it comes on food consumption. So when you do your surveys and you look at what the food consumption is and how they're eating it and how it's prepared, preparing is going across the board the same way. Has nothing to do with the preparation of the food. It has to do with the quality of food that you are buying from the food provider. It's not your management company.
I would disagree with that.
Well, I can tell you
I
that
have worked in this kitchen.
I can tell you that if you buy your food from Reinhardt, you're going to get different quality food than if you buy your food from Cisco.
I can tell you that I have worked in both ends of that. Okay. And so when I tell you that I know what's coming in from USDA, I know what's being pushed or what's coming in through farm to table food. It is about presentation. Because if I take chicken patties that I cooked on Monday and I take those chicken patties and I serve them again the next day, that's utilization. But when I take them and I throw some sauce and cheese on them on the third day, and I try to push them out there to my students, that's a problem. That is presentation.
I can tell you from my prior experience, I have not been in the kitchens here, but I can tell you from my prior experience, we did not have that on our menus. We rotated our menus because our menus had to be submitted to the state. And the state had to sign off on our menus. For the nutrition purposes, they had to go through the dietary. And that's how we had to do it a month ahead of time. That's what I have to find out now.
Yeah. Additionally, as part of our new mission statement and in terms of our core values, that student voice piece needs to be worked in, and there's some clear data and what students have expressed via survey works that we haven't factored into this conversation yet, and that we will in terms of the experience thus far in terms of management versus the contract moving forward versus what students are saying that we want to bring into this conversation, and we most certainly will. And that would be regardless of the service providers selected moving forward, whether that's on a 1-year extension or on a 3-year. Ultimately, that piece will come secondarily. It was a matter of this was, in terms of being a fiscal consideration that we can definitely take into account, people's
So-
experiences.
Do we want to direct
So-
the superintendent to at least have talks with Chartwell regarding rolling over the contract for another year?
Yeah, and I think the wellness committee, subcommittee should probably get involved with this on some level. As this is part of that, right? So,
Can, we can look to add that in. Again, what,
yeah,
investigating what a 1 year and then improvements, if it were existing, is also a very different conversation of, hey, our 3 year moving forward, what are we looking for and how can we improve? And what are we looking for moving forward? Again, that breadth and stakeholder input is also different depending on what you're doing. But in terms of that, making sure that student voice is heard as well as anybody, as well as that experience, that will be there. However, the time and effort in terms of getting the different committees together for a 3 year and the types of investigation or the types of things and conversations and dialogue would be very different on a 3 year versus a 1 year, and the concerns that can be addressed or would expected to be addressed in that 1 year. So just from a fiscal point of view, again, we can have the wellness committee weigh in regardless of whether it's a 1 year or a 3 year. I would just say that by investing, I don't think we can lose out by having that initial dialogue on the 1 year and see where we come in, because there should also be some receptivity to what we're presenting, to people's experiences, to the wellness committee as well. But the time available to dig into hearing out the various, whether it be nutritional, whether it be presentation, whether it be local sourcing, the time, effort, and energy to hear those pieces, in a 1 year versus an extended 3 year would also vary. And we
So
would,
Carol, what are we looking?
Okay, so we don't need to vote, but I would like to propose, if we are in agreement, to at least to direct the superintendent to investigate the parameters of a 1 year rollover with Chartwells. That's what we would be directing the superintendent to do.
yes.
All right, so that is your directive.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next we are going to move on to the superintendent's report, and I will turn that over to Mr. Perdoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the public and virtually or watching this recording. My superintendent's report this evening consists of 3 items. The non-action so the informational aspect of the personnel report, a calendar survey update from, again, actually going back to or getting to that voice aspect of our core beliefs and trying to ingrain it and make sure it's ubiquitous in all that we do. And then getting into our suspension, both in school and out of school trend analysis. So next slide, please. So what you see in this first aspect is we have 3 extensions of leave, 1 new leave of absence, 2 retirements, in which we certainly wish them the best and will hope that they will come to us. Or actually, we have 1 that will be with us for the remainder of the school year, 1 that is whose service and time is coming to a close shortly, but we will bring in all retirees at the end of the year, and I'm hopeful that they can join us. And although we have some people out on leaves of absence and some folks retiring and leaving us, I would also like to welcome the newest member, a one-to-one teaching assistant at Matunic Elementary as part of the Bridge program. So best wishes to those on leaves and those who are taking retirement, and welcome to our new employees. Next slide, please. So we, as you're aware, we did a community survey that was revamped, or that I revamped from last year because of the metrics and the different colors and the problems with what I'll chalk up to the Google and Google Forms. But so we did a new calendar survey, but we made sure not just to have our employees and parents, but we also added in students this year. Again, can't say that our core values are about voice and then exclude some. So especially those who are most impacted by it. So here before you, as I alluded to last meeting, when the survey was still open, all three groups do present some of the same findings. Ultimately, while it's still something that matters or is important, it is not to the degree that historically, starting after Labor Day, whether it just be this next Labor Day because it's happening so late, plus we have an election day then tagged on to it that we must close school for, or whether it's Labor Day in general and there's a changing of the culture. But we do see, and you'll see across all of these surveys, that ultimately starting after Labor Day is of the least importance to all of these groups. Ending the school year before Juneteenth does tend to get most of the groups, all three groups. However, ensuring that we have week-long vacations is the most important here to our students. Next slide, please. And my thanks to the 350 plus students who took the time, and that does range from elementary to high school. Not to be outdone though, the families come on in with 371, also spanning all of our buildings. Again, you see a little bit of a pivot here, with April vacation taking the lead amongst the vacations, but ultimately the main thing that we were looking for, because of the outlier status, was really those first two questions of when should we start and as well as end, and those two moving targets. And again, we see from our families that in terms of starting after Labor Day, for the majority of folks is of the least importance, and ending before Juneteenth. This observed before Friday, June 18th, that I need to look into on the state, what's now the state official calendar. And I believe it's because of the state billing cycle or the state payment cycle. The state is observing Juneteenth on a Monday. However, the rule of thumb in some cases has always, at least for me, has always been if it's on a Saturday, it would be observed on Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, it would be observed on a Monday. That is not the case when I take a look at the state and the state promulgated calendar, which is no longer in draft. So that we may have some flexibility. In the end, though, it would just be the 184-day calendar we're still going to pass regardless, and still try to end before, regardless of whether that we created a calendar with it observed on Friday or Monday. And then next slide, please. And then for faculty, staff, and administration on there, again, once again, Labor Day, not that important. Before Juneteenth has the most first place votes, but again, those week-long vacations, especially April, is of primary importance. Again, I believe that we will be able to craft a calendar that does not shorten either of the vacations, but we put those out there as separate questions that in the event somewhere down the line, or let's just get that data piece in terms of was there an appetite for one or the other, and both came in relatively strong. That's going to do it for survey information. So I'll pause before I get to the next item on my report. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So I wanted to, and needed to put this item before the committee, not only because of in terms of the work that has been done and the data that I'm going to present tonight in terms of the suspension rates, but and the work being done in association with the equity audit, but also in terms of Rhode Island general law. We do have an obligation to discuss and disaggregate our suspension data. And so I'm bringing that before you here tonight. What I will go through, and has been also memorialized in the memo that was sent to the committee and is also available publicly, which will go through some of the ins and outs of, or the specific details. But I take a look, or this analysis goes through only the last 3 years. Both this past school year, in 24-25, the year prior, 23-24, and 22-23. The number below is the students with infractions that ultimately led to a consequence being issued of an in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension, and that then we total them up. As we go through this, I rely, and all of the data, if folks wanted to disaggregate this further, is available in all of the that I allude to both in the memo and that I'll present here tonight, as well as that are on the next few slides, can be found either in the Rhode Island Department of Education Discipline Dashboard, as well as our district-wide school accountability report card. I am purposefully taking this from a district perspective because as you read in the memo, oftentimes we may be talking about 5 students. We might be talking about 3 students. And as we start to narrow down to the school level, I start to worry about identifiable information. However, because subgroups ultimately at the district level have larger N sizes, I'm comfortable talking about it here publicly because again of the larger N size. But I do not get into specific schools. I will talk about a little bit about specific schools and initiatives that they have undertaken either last year or this year that we believe may be contributing in most cases positively to our changes in data. So before I move through the next 3 slides, are there any questions on what is presented here? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, so it's the students with infractions are the total number of students, and then in school, out of school total, that's the total,
And
suspensions that were allotted out to that group of 100 students.
yes.
Okay.
So it's ultimately 100 students are received a total of 243 either in school or out of school suspensions last school year.
And that's ranging from a day to multiple days.
Yes.
So there's no, it might come later, but this is just, if it's as simple as one day, or it could be multiple days, it counts as one, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So if you go into the, and I can do this, but again, as our first presentation, it was for me most important to disaggregate this in terms of our student groups. I do not go into the average duration. However, that I can do that based on the RIDE discipline dashboard. It will tell us on average what was the average duration of an in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension. So those can be compared. That is not part of this report though, but it can be done. Okay. So next slide, please. So additionally, in terms of the bigger conversation, especially when we take a look at disaggregating the data, in terms of our school and district accountability, the Department of Education for federal purposes and what gets the most attention, justifiably so, is the number of out-of-school suspensions. I'm also using this data because it not only is it publicly available, but it also displays in such a manner that as we go through the years, you will be able to see many, not all, of our student groups begin to decline. So over the course of the next 3 slides, you will see our out-of-school suspensions that decrease by 43% from this 22-23 school year to last school year. So we go from 68 school suspensions and to last year, or out of school suspensions, excuse me, to 35 incidents, which represents, again, it's not a year to year, but it is a significant improvement. Also in here, because it alludes to it, and you'll see it written at the top here, in the 2022-2023 school year, South Kingstown used out-of-school suspensions 2.7 times per 100 students. And you will also see that rate decline most recently to last year to 1.7 times. So I will ask for the next slide, and as we go through, you'll see that all students, that rate in 23-24 still is at 2.8%. We also see that our American Indian and Alaska Native student group is at 6 total suspensions. Our Black or African American students, 9 students. Hispanic students, 11. 2 or more races, 7 out of school suspension. 32 white suspensions. Economically disadvantaged at 46. English language learners, 3 out of school suspensions. And then our students with disabilities, 33 total suspensions, again, in the 23-24 school year. So fairly similar from 22-23 to 23-24. Next slide, please. Our out of school suspensions, though, as I alluded to earlier, last school year dramatically decreased to a total of 39. We do see that all students rate go from a 2.7 to a 1.7. However, we do see a decrease across all student groups, with the exception of our Black or African American students, which will be addressed and obviously goes through. Additionally, I will point out that we are still disproportionate in terms of whether it be a measurement based off of all students, or if we were to take the baseline of white students. All of those subgroups are still disproportionate when using those factors. However, as of this last year, and in terms of the accountability ranking, all student subgroups were below the threshold of school accountability, again, with the exception of Black or African American students who were suspended out of school across the entire district, which there were 12 last school year. Before I move on to in terms of talking about this in terms of our current actions, and that again, we still need to pay attention to, we still need to take action on, we still have professional development being done and needs to continue. Are there any questions about any of these 3 years worth of data points?
So first, I would like to make a comment. We used to get this information on a monthly basis when we had an accountability subcommittee. And so I am thrilled to see this information come back to us here. The one thing I don't understand is the little chart to the left that says suspension points.
Suspension points. This is so when a school and district's schools accountabilities points are scorecard is released, and the number of stars that a school is ranked. Student success suspension, out of school suspension rate is one of the student success factors. And so your suspension rate based on out of school suspension rate, RIDE uses in order to award points or stars to. In this case, the lower the metric, you're going to start at 3 stars, and you will, depending on if you hit that first dotted line, once you hit that ranking, you will start to potentially either potentially or have your number of points awarded to your student success factors or your school success factors, that will start to diminish. So because so many of our student groups, or as well as our all students, is below that threshold, we are receiving that's where it says suspension points, 3 out of 3, because that rate is below the threshold that RIDE has created for school accountability.
Thank you.
I want to ask about the reasons for the decrease. Is it the same behavior, different different punishment in school versus out of school, or is it a change in behavior in the school population?
So, and that's a great question, and we need to dive into it more. I think that in terms of, because we've had an overall decrease in our student enrollment, but yet we still have we now have the same number of total suspensions. I see us using in-school suspension. In-school suspension is being used more, and that is also being addressed. So I think that there were potentially infractions that used to earn an out-of-school suspension, and now either other practices or in-school suspensions are going towards it, as well as really, I think, and actually that's why it's first on, actually, if we go to the next slide, and I can always come back, is that ultimately, I think that last year, I think a lot of it was going through all of the data in anticipation of the equity audit and having those conversations and bringing forward here, last year we went through looking at data exercises with the folks from Westwind and Ed Metric. And so I think that ultimately those conversations and going into the equity audit caused some reflection and caused some changes in behavior. However, we also have seen a change in certain behaviors. We've also, more and more discussed restorative practices, and ultimately the role that discipline is playing is that the importance of discipline is not as a punishment, but as a reinforcer in some, as to use it as a way to encourage positive behavior. And so making sure that there's restorative practices. If we are going to use punishments, potentially be able to use those in a way not as punishments, but also as negative reinforcers. So, for example, and what I mean by that is, for example, you can say, "Oh, you have your cell phone." Again, not something we would, well, maybe you would suspend, but in the past. But instead of saying, "Oh, you got caught with your cell phone, you have 2 detentions," we flip it. That would be the punishment aspect. It would be, okay, if you can go, then you have 2 detentions and I'm going to take those away if in the next 2 weeks you do, or the next month you're not caught using your phone again. So getting students to perform or engage, as most do, or in some cases students need help doing the right behavior rather than just being punished for the wrong one, is a shift that, and conversations that we've started to have. So I think bringing the data to light with everybody, whether that be at faculty meetings, whether that be at professional development sessions to read the equity audit, to look at the data and just in a disaggregated fashion, I think helped contribute to that. Other factors that I see up here, I do want to say for the public who's watching this and who's here, is that not all of these are district-wide. Some of these may be at specific schools. So for example, obviously the equity audit data and the report was about all of our schools, and the engagement of the administration and the faculty and staff went across all schools. However, conscious discipline and professional development in that specific program was school specific. That was in one of our elementary schools. We did all schools in the district did do professional development at faculty meetings with the South County Prevention Coalition. Members of safety teams, as well as people whose job description have engaged, and I'm sure that went back to 22, 23 and years prior. Safety care, which is about de-escalation, as well as gets in, for those who need it, restraint training, but is again, primarily is focused on de-escalation. And then this year, what we've done. And so why I'm optimistic in that we will continue this trend, and we will, like, as I alluded to, where we are not just happy with our decrease and where we're at, we're still looking to improve, and we're not going to just rest on last year's. So we've revised certain schools' handbooks specifically to take a look at what are what are responses to infractions that administration felt locked into. One of the biggest problems, I've got a lot of problems within school suspension as well as out of school suspension, but within school suspension, unfortunately, far too often, if there were misbehavior in in-school suspension, often can then lead to either more days of in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension. So we're addressing that, as well as giving our administrators that flexibility in terms of not being locked into an initial infraction, feeling for a minor infraction, feeling locked into because a chart or a consequence that was created by another party that they felt they needed to adhere to. So we've changed that. Additionally, this school year, we've established in a school new behavior management workflows. So behaviors that are specific to teacher handled behavior, and that ultimately before they get escalated to the administration. And again, the administration is the only party in a school that can formally suspend. Deans are unable to suspend. They can apply other consequences, but administrators are the only ones who can suspend. So when we have a workflow in some cases where the normal operations is everything getting kicked over, two things happen. One is that we have a breakdown of that relationship, both between the student and the teacher and the administrator, because it's a matter of it could be a matter of classroom management. It's a matter of building that relationship. It's one piece to have that conversation of, hey, you behaved this way in my class, let's make it right together, versus yeah, hi, we're having a conversation and I heard you misbehaved in this class. Give me your side. Then there can be potentially animosity between all parties involved, and there's a breakdown of relationships. So we've established that behavior management workflow in one of our schools to make sure that we're calling home, that teachers are taking actions, again, on more minor classroom management behaviors, things that are aligned with the Rhode Island educator evaluation system that we would expect them to have, that again, makes it or promotes that restorative as well as familial contact aspect of notification that just didn't exist in the past, that we believe will again build on that relationship as well as continue this decline in trends. Also, as I've mentioned to this committee before, we took advantage of the existing contract with our coaches, and we did institute a gap closure coach across the district. And so that they're taking a look at all data, not just academic data, but also behavioral and multi-tiered systems of support, that tier one. Again, making sure that all students are experiencing the same thing, and focusing in really on making sure that all folks, if they need support in that they can receive that during the day or after school or before school support and professional development. As some of you know, also, we began this school year with professional development from the Rhode Island Autism Project. I haven't spoken to it yet, but I'll do so now. As one, we also see that our disproportionality was extreme in terms of our students with disabilities and their rate of suspension. That also has dramatically decreased. And in the memo, discussed the change in terms of behavior plans and IEPs that are put in place, as well as folks working with those students and working collaboratively with other faculty members. But again, we also had professional development this year to make sure that we can identify some of those behaviors that are ultimately a function of someone's disability, especially in terms of a disability that is increasing and is at a high level. I believe it's second in terms of all of our students and their IEP status. And then last but not least, we continue to work on and will continue, and I've put some data points on there or some research specifically as I've been talking about relationships. Ultimately, making sure that relationships are going to be tested, relationships are going to be are going to struggle, but ultimately it's at the heart of what we do. And in terms of corrective action, whether it be positive reinforcement doesn't mean anything to me if we don't have a good relationship. Neither does that negative reinforcement. In some cases, neither does that positive or punishment. In some cases, that punishment, if we don't have a good relationship, can be a reinforcer. And so it's critical for us this year, and whether it's been in professional development, whether it's been in our Q1 efforts, whether it be in the updates to faculty, staff in the community, we continue to work with, as well as seeking out, and my thanks to Mr. Seeger for the health and wellness grant from RIDE, that we continue to build upon as a foundation of making sure that all students have a positive relation built on that trust and respect as cornerstones of our core values. So again, I would highlight that, well, why are we talking about relationships so much? Again, it is the cornerstone and it is research based. All of these pieces here, regardless of whether it's conscious discipline or what was presented to this by the South County Prevention Coalition, is all database, is all based in research and is data-based. So ultimately, it is a cornucopia. I think it's the cornucopia of things. I think it's awareness being raised through the equity audit, as well as being faced with that piece. I think that there's people who have been reflective on their existing practices. I think it's also that people know they now have permission to change what was in place to do better, and can put in new operations, policies, and procedures, and are going to be empowered ultimately by those that will allow us to continue driving forward and reduce these out of school. And hopefully, I'm fairly confident right now, but we'll also see a decline in in-school suspensions based off of some of the changes that have been made this school year. I'm anticipating another decline this time in our in-school suspensions next year.
Any questions for the superintendent?
Just a comment. I think this is great. All this training, I think this is a positive direction. I look forward to seeing future positive directions, because always, we all know chronic absenteeism and not being in front of teachers is a huge impediment to education. So it's wonderful to see that we're working towards ways to manage that in a way that keeps students in front of teachers and keeps them learning, especially the ones that need the most help, most the supports to get there.
Thank you. And absolutely. And, on a related note, it would be, it's counterintuitive if we think about it as like, as we push out and we say, every school day matters, come to school, attendance matters, but then, oh, welcome to school, we're not putting you into class. So, in terms of reserve, that's why I think changing some of those first offense into in-school suspension is so important. Because again, having those conversations that say, okay, why does this child need why, if they engaged in insubordination, disrespect with one teacher, are we not repairing that relationship? Or why are they now being taken out of instruction from all of their teachers? We need to repair, if they have a great relationship happening with other teachers or other students, we need to repair that. And so, saving both out of school and in school suspension for the most serious behaviors, and then making sure that if there's an interpersonal relationship or a breakdown of that we deal with that and don't assume that that's going to cross the board, as well as implement a punishment or negative reinforcer that then is going to has the potential to spread it across multiple people or multiple classrooms where it doesn't exist. So I appreciate that recognition of alignment.
Yeah, thank you for showing the positive trends that are happening. Just for myself and perhaps people in the public who are either watching or will at some point, could you give, like, for the in-school suspension, is that for a full day or is that part of the day? And where do they go and what are they doing in whatever environment they're in? And are there things that are being done that keeps them on some level engaged?
So again, speaking in generalities, when an in-school suspension is given, work is collected for and given to the student. It is supervised, either by a substitute or a teaching assistant, is my understanding. That will vary across grade. That might vary across grade levels in terms of, as well as certain buildings where speaking in the, so I'll speak from in the past, and ultimately the need to have a in-school suspension room previously, because it was being administered all the time, versus now it might be as an on or as needed basis. And then if students have IEP supports that are placed, they generally, it's my understanding that they would be removed to receive those services, as well as ultimately it's generally in a secluded room. It's a social, more of a social and academic suspension, but it's held in the school building. The student is sequestered from their peers, but they do receive the work that is for that school day that they can work on or are expected to. There's nothing also stopping teachers who know, because teachers are informed in advance, generally, if a student is going to be assigned to in-school suspension, that they can send the work, but that at the same time, they can also come down and see the student. There's no seclusion from teachers outside of the regular. There's nothing, there's seclusion, but there is nothing stopping a teacher from coming in if they needed to give students instructions, or if there was a makeup work or if something needed to be explained. Can't guarantee that it would happen, which is again, the other problem, but ultimately that's what in-school suspension looks like. It's a general seclusion in both socially and academically, where students are supervised by a certified adult, either as a teaching assistant or teacher certification in some cases, or I don't believe the building administrator. But that's the most frequently, that's how it happens, and work is provided for them to complete. And it
So there
is,
could be multiple students in one room?
yes,
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
yep.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the superintendent report?
I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. I do want to make a correction. I think Stuart Lander was outside the room when I did roll call, so let the record show Stuart is here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to school committee business. Not till the end.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table item 6A for a future meeting.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion to table 6A. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Will bring us to 6B, discussion action Rhode Island student survey. And I will turn that back to the superintendent.
Madam Chair, so this is before you, this is the a Rhode Island Department of Health and Rhode Island Department of Education endorsed student survey. It alternates with the student risk behavior survey. It alternates years. We are being asked, or at least in terms of the commissioner or actually all three bodies, Department of Health, Behavioral Health, as well as the Department of Education, have signed off on this request. They are particularly, it is not that, hey, South Kingstown has data that's an outlier or pieces of this, because we are part of a student assistance counselor grant. They often want to see our data in order to see if by taking part in this grant and having these counselors available, do we show differences or do they map out trends associated with those efforts? So that is referenced in the letter, but might be easily overlooked. So for the past, actually, I'm not sure for how many years, but quite a few, I believe. Our student assistance coordinator, we do have a grant funded position that again places this forward. In addition to school committee approval, this survey would also need the approval of both the principal at the middle school, Mrs. McNeese, as well as at the principal of the high school, Dr. McGare, and both in terms of their review of the survey as well as the time that is necessitated for this. I do not believe that we get, by partaking in this survey, I do not believe we get South Kingstown data only. We don't get a separate report. Oh, hey, this is something just for you. We just know that when we take a look at this data and in the report, we can look at it and say our students are included in there. Their voices are in there. And so whatever analysis we want to do with the results, at least we know that we are represented in that. So the other piece in here that may be overlooked is that a copy of the paper survey has been provided. That is not what students get. They do not get a paper copy and they do not receive every single question. It is an electronic survey that will bring up questions at random. I do not believe that there is any availability for us to say, here's a topic, we will participate, but we're not going to participate in X, Y, or Z. I do take it as an all or nothing, again, because of the random sampling and because it's not the full survey. That is not what students will experience. We can't pick and choose. It does need this body's permission, though, in order to proceed.
So this is only for middle and high schoolers?
That is correct.
Is it start with sixth graders or is it a different grade level in middle school?
I believe it starts with six. Well, for us, it would be sixth grade regardless. It should be only sixth. If we were a middle school that were 5, 6, I believe they wouldn't be off administering it to the fifth graders.
Any
The
other
survey
questions?
itself says it starts 6 to 12 and it's for 10-year-olds to 19-year-olds, I think. I have a question about it is,
Please.
it only strictly, about, it's very long.
Yep.
And I understand, I've seen it before. The group that is behind it is wonderful and they're a true asset to, our community in particular, but the state in general. So, I fully support us allowing it. I'm curious though, when it gets implemented, like, is it something, I know it's optional, so students don't have to participate if they don't want to. And I'm curious though, like, when is it presented to the students now? Is it in like SK 101? Is it during their day? Is it sent to their house? Like, how do they receive it?
It would be, we would need to take a part of the school. So if we decide to participate, we notify them and they set up a day and time with the school's administration to set up a specific block of time where students would be administered during the course of the school day.
Do you think it's possible to ask for our data to be separated out, or am I being like,
I mean, it never hurts to ask. I know in my former life, we asked and we were told it wouldn't be. And so that was a point of contention. Because it was a matter of we're not getting it and then comparing it to everybody. It is statewide. And obviously there are lots of, as we just went through disaggregating data, we're unable to do that. So, but I can ask.
So in your past life, in receiving that information, did you find it helpful? Oh, no, not
In the
in getting,
statewide
in
report,
getting the statewide information. did you find that you could actually use the data in a positive way to enact any types of policy, procedure?
Yeah,
Training.
in former lives, I know that in getting back to health and wellness committees, that if we started seeing spikes or changes in students' behavior, when unfortunately, I need to talk about it, when vaping first came on the scene and, and to see if that was, and what was being ultimately reported, as well as saying, oh, is that happening across all schools? So starting to see some of those trends, as well as, actually, the main time that we used it was actually to highlight how many students were not engaging in certain behaviors that we say, oh, well, teenagers engage in these risk-taking behaviors. That's just a normal part of adolescence, where we would say, well, we'd use it to challenge that assumption in some cases, or use it with students. Oh, everybody's going to the parties. Oh, everybody's doing X, Y, and Z. And we'd say, we would be able to we'd incorporate it into health curriculum in order to reinforce that point, that your perception of everybody versus what people are actually reporting isn't there. And so giving that permission, as well as that peer support of not engaging in these risk-taking behaviors. So we've used it in my former life, we've used it on both ends. Again, and that's adult subcommittee to inform, hey, what's coming down the line, as well as, hey, take a look at our potentially interventions, as well as taking a look from a curricular standpoint into making sure our curriculum, especially in health, is real and relevant to our students.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the administration of this Rhode Island student survey.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. That will bring us to School Committee Business C, discussion action Augusta Hazard Scholarship application for the school year 26-27 draft. Michelle, do you want to speak to this?
So this application is coming before you, just to get input if you are interested in any adjustments or modifications. And then we will put it out to the students here at the high school and proceed with the looking through the applications to award the scholarships. It was changed pretty drastically about 5 years ago, and we've kept it that same way ever since. So I would ask for your input if you have any input on any of the parts of the scholarship, and if not, I will ask Ms. Marshall to forward it to the guidance department. Questions about it?
I can just say that I think we made a positive change last year to make it from 150 to 500 words so that kids have a bit longer time to write their essay. But I think it looks really good. But anybody else have any questions or comments for Michelle?
I was on the committee last year and going through the applications along with Michelle. And it's great to see the ones that do come through, some of what these students are doing and accomplishing in terms of not only their performance, but the extracurricular activities and engagement in the community. So I would say for all of you who are out there and would like to get some cash, this is a great way. What's that? This, and participate in the scholarship, which we appreciate that any of these that are made available, that you be sensitive to the timelines so that you get your applications in on time.
I agree with Mr. Landers. We would like to see some applications.
Do we need to make a motion or anything on it, or is it just,
If there are no changes, it can just go to the high school, so Terry can get that to them.
I just wanted to, yeah, I just want to ask a quick,
You want to
right, but I just want to ask a quick question. Is there,
vote for October?
sorry. Um, I was gonna ask about, so this can be awarded to any number of students who apply. It's just up to the committee to determine if one student gets it or 5 students get it, depending on how many, how many apply, right? Okay,
And we have a fixed amount of money. We know when we review the applications, we have an idea of what the ballpark is for the total amount of money that we have to award, but we don't know the exact dollar amount because
Right.
it's based on the amount of money available through this Augusta Hazard Trust.
Mhm.
And so, we award it based on percents and, so when we made the first big revision to this application, it might have been 10 years ago. What we were doing prior to that is students were submitting to us the results of their FAFSA application. We were getting their names and addresses and, like, in my personal opinion, way too much personal information. And so what we were looking for was to change it so that the scholarship committee had no clue whose application we were looking at. We do know their class rank. We do know their GPA. We do know where they're applying to school. And like Mr. Landis said, all their extracurricular activities and their, we see their their grades. So we know what type of courses they're taking, but we don't know who it is. So, in that way, we can go through them, and since we switched to this method and somebody, I don't know if Ms. Marcia Salt does this for us, but somebody erases or blacks out all the names and all the personal identifying information before the committee gets them. And so since we went to this method, we kind of have been using their essay as a way of separating the wheat from the chaff. So
No.
we want to put this out and we want to make the deadline. We've had it set for the beginning of March, and that way we can take some time reviewing and discussing the applications and have it ready for honors night.
and I'm not suggesting we do this. I'm just asking the question. Like, would it make any sense to have a cap on number of students who could get this? Like if 20 students applied, you can only get awarded to 5 of the 20, or if all 20 are qualified, you give it to all. And again, just asking a question, not suggesting we need a cap, just hear your thoughts, having done this for a number of years.
That was one of the reasons that
Right.
there is not a cap on how many students get a scholarship. But before we moved to the essay, we had all this personal information, and I worked with a former school committee member who had done it for years. And he said to me, we're going to give everybody a little bit of money because we have way too much of their personal information. So if 20 students applied, 20 students got money. And what happened is, so 20 students would get money, and the application process was kind of tedious because you had to include all this information, and they would only get a small amount of money because we don't have a big pot of money to start with. And so the word would spread. They know each other. The Augusta has it is not worth the time and energy to apply for it. So the next year we'd get 3 applications or 5, and they would get a larger amount of money. And that word would spread. And the next year we'd be back up to 25 or 30. And so we kind of keep it at, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6. It depends. We don't set a limit because of the fact that if there are 2 students whose applications are very close, we want to have the flexibility to be able to give them both. Thank you for asking the question,
Yeah,
because that meant I could explain more of the history.
Right. No, that makes sense. I just, again, just wanted to ask the question to see if it made sense, but I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, and just as, so each committee member goes through each and every application and each and every essay and independently bring that information, and we look to see which students rise to the top amongst the committee.
So Michelle has made a request that we do approve it, so
I'll
go
make,
ahead.
yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the Augusta Hazard Scholarship application for school year 26-27 draft.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. All right, that will bring us to school building committee update. And just so everybody knows, after we have the update, we are going to reopen public comment. So, but go ahead,
Perfect.
Kate.
We were gonna make that motion anyway. So thank you. Yeah, so we had our school building committee meeting on Thursday. We got some exciting news that we were able to bring forward to the town council last night. So we had our final GMP, which is our guaranteed maximum price, that the building of the South Kingstown High School, the construction process and building of the high school, and of the demo of this current building, and then the refinishing of the fields. We have the final complete and total number that will cost. And it is, if we, just a refresher, we are construction management at risk is the type of project. So the bottom line that I'll share tonight, if you haven't seen the meeting already, it's locked in. So they can't come back 2 months from now and say, hey, the price of XYZ went up, so your price is going to go up. So our initial budget that we were working with within the constraints of was $116 million with some extra in there. And the total construction costs, I'm going to group everything together and then break it down for a second, but the total contract value with Gilbane came in at 114,598,780. With a savings of just under $2 million. So we were 1.940938 under budget. The exciting part about, that's very exciting just in general. The exciting part about that, there is another component to that. Is included in that were any pre-construction services that we utilized with Left Field or with Gilbane and any contractors that we've done any pre-construction work and surveys around is included in that with $175,000. And then also the geothermal test well that we paid, that the school district paid for, that 97,755 is also included in that final number. Again, very exciting for the town. We do have this, it's very rare to come in under budget, especially the climate now that we're in. I do want to caution, there were some interesting questions that were asked at last night's town council meeting as usual, that were kind of was making it a little confusing and murky, but I want to make it clear that this is for the physical construction of the building itself, the demo of this building, and then the rebuilding of the fields. And the goal isn't to now turn around and spend 1.9 million extra dollars. And, but it is also not to say, okay, we're $2 million under budget, we're good, it's going to cost $148 million now for the project. So this money will stay as a savings at the moment, and it will be there if there are extenuating circumstances going forward, because we still have until September or August 2027, we still have work to do, and we still have things that are not included in the construction budget that we have to focus on. It is very exciting to know that we've already purchased our steel, which by the way, will be going up in 2 weeks, which that's going to be very exciting. They're finishing up the foundations and putting in the temporary roads where like the gravel so the trucks can get around and whatnot. So lot of moving pieces going on. But that is our most exciting component that we were able to share with the town last night, which was really exciting. So yay.
Fantastic.
I do, before anybody, well, actually, you know what? Does anybody have any questions about that in particular?
Time I was able to go and peek at everything in the daylight, because when I've had opportunity, it's been nighttime. And so my cousin drove me so that I could look, and the people working the workers were like I think they kept expecting us to come on the site. Yeah, we did. So, but I was so excited.
So Kate, those numbers are just for the high school project and don't include the Curtis Corner Middle. Oh,
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
A couple things, a totally separate budget, yeah. So a couple key things that are happening, especially if we have any abutters that are watching. For the next 2 weeks, there's still going to be some site development work going on, but once they move over and we start going to the vertical build, which is the steel, there will be less disruption to our abutters than what we've been experiencing to this point. So our abutters have been amazing, and when there have been a handful of scenarios with vibration, they've contacted us immediately. We've had our team communicate with them, go and inspect properties, and we're working together hand in hand really nicely, which is wonderful. Like I said, the steel will start to go in January 27th. So again, that's where we're going to see the actual, it's harder to see with the fences, right? Because you have to go up and peek in. But once the building starts to go vertical, it will really be clear and obvious. Speaking of Curtis Corner, so it's its own budget. That plus the high school is what makes up the 150 with some other components. But for the Curtis Corner fields, we are sticking with the $11 million budget constraint is what we're going to be working towards. We have put together, and I say we, and I don't mean that actually, it's the project team has worked with Terry Lynch, Chip McGarrett, just like they did when they were putting the programs together for the high school building. They're doing this same process for the athletic fields to make sure that all the stakeholders have a voice in the conversation about the field construction process, the type of materials we're going to use. Terry Murphy, Rex Eberly, Justin Banks from the town that were involved. And then we have our architects, engineers, and planning groups that are involved in the conversation. So there's that component. They're starting to put their schedule together and design elements, and we will go through the exact same process that we went through for the high school. We will go out to bid. They're putting together a construction design documents. We'll go out to bid a group that is not Gilbane. There'll be groups out there. They can bid on the project, and then we'd go through the vetting process, select a group that is going to be involved with building and constructing our fields, and then moving forward from there. And we we are solidifying the schedule now. We don't have exact dates, but we are again making sure that anybody who understands where we are and what we're expecting when they come to bid for the project, that we have budget and time constraint, and that we're hitting our budget, or we're not going over budget, and we are not going over time. And so that the facilities will open simultaneously in the fall of 2027.
There's just one
you-
other addition with that stood out to me, that the committee should be aware of, is that when the bid went out for the demolition of Curtis Corner, they, what was presented last time, saving those rooms, with Curtis Corner. In addition, they also, put out a bid for full demolition as well, just to make sure we had all of the price points made available to us, as well as making sure that the architects, in the design could show, well, there's some concerns over limitations and cost considerations about maintaining that site once you have to cap and don't have electricity or don't have water flow. And that might also push in costs that were unintended that then can't go to the facilities. So no decision's been made, but bids did go out for the commit so that everybody could consider full demolition as well as saving part of that site. No decision has been made, though.
Please continue to use the term we. You have invested a lot of time and.
I took the
energy and
we,
work
I took the
into
we
this
out of that,
project,
yes.
and you don't.
No,
take the we out,
I
you keep
appreciate
adding.
that. I just meant it's not a formal, but it's not a formal subcommittee and it.
You, my dear, not a
So,
we, us.
nope, I just wanted to make sure it was not a school building committee subcommittee. It was a group, a working group that the project team would put together. Thank you though for that, Paula.
All right. Thank you so much for the update, Kate and Mr. Projaza. We, at this time, are going to reopen public comment. If anybody would like to come to the podium.
Just when you thought you is this working? Just when you thought you got rid of me, right? So I haven't been around for about 3 months because
Sorry, Doral, could you just state your name?
Doral Beasley.
Sorry, just making it official.
We converted our home to geothermal. Oh yeah, it's done. So that was yeah, that's why I haven't been coming. Couple things. I just happened to go through the staff directory for the high school. I didn't see an assistant principal. Is that right? We don't have one? We do?
Yes, we do. Miss Angelina and Christina.
I didn't see one listed unless,
Okay, I'll
okay.
take a look, but we most certainly do.
So here's another thing. So last time I came to something that I wanted to go behind the high school. So I parked over here and then I attempted to walk along the high school and then go and be able to get into the parking lot, but that wasn't an option then, and I think it's not even close to being an option now. So wouldn't it be helpful to be able to park it in the hazard parking lot and then walk along the high school, just walk along the high school wall and then take a right and then be able to get into the parking lot behind the high school?
So I'm assuming you mean like if I pulled up tonight and wanted to get over to the auditorium?
Yeah.
Should be able to walk around.
Yeah.
I know we clearly used to be able to do that before the fencing was up. I think that's a risk, like a physical safety risk. So that's why they've put that up, because they've had to remove all along this area. They've had to remove all the structures and everything that was out here. So I think it was more a matter of just an abundance of safety that they put the perimeter up like that. But I hear you, because it's not ideal to park back there sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So I looked at the superintendent's report, and I'm specifically talking about the suspension data. And I noticed the sentence here where it says that you're not breaking it down by individual schools. But in fact, when you don't do that, when you don't break it down that far, I understand the student privacy issue, but you're not really telling the whole story, because you could have, in fact, the percentage of the number of in-school and out-of-school suspensions that are specific to a school or a couple of schools or a certain grade within a school, or you could even go down to a teacher level. It could be. So I'm hoping that if you have information, if you're gathering information where you can focus, that you can focus even closer to where the problem is, that's what you are doing. I'm assuming that's what I'm hoping you are doing that.
So Doral, we leave that to our administrators to do it at that level, but we can't do that in an open meeting because there's so few numbers, it's identifiable, just so you have the information, okay?
And of course, you do also have the component of one of the things that RIDE hasn't done, which I know why they haven't done it, but I don't agree with it, is they have the attendance matters, attendance matters thing, right? But they're only talking about students. Well, attendance matters also for teachers. In fact, I brought this up at other meetings. I believe that teachers' attendance matters more than students, because when they're not in the classroom, 10, 15, 20, 25 students are being affected. So this is, it's all related together. And even though I wasn't coming to meetings, I was looking at your data. And you ended up with last year's assessments, and we still don't have a 5-star school. And what, I'm a taxpayer like you are. And we're spending a lot of money per student here, a lot. We're no longer second in the state, now we're fourth behind Narragansett, Providence, I think Westerly, but we're right up there. And the number of students in these subgroups that's the problems. The reasons you don't have 5-star schools is you have these subgroups: economically disadvantaged, African American students, Black students, students with disabilities. Those subgroups, when they're shown to be not meeting the standards, that's where you're getting the problem. That's where the problems are becoming a 5-star school. But in this town, we know we've lost half of our students over the last 20-some years. But also those subgroups, the number of students in those subgroups is also declining. So there are not as many students in those subgroups that you need to help, but it still looks like we're not helping them. So we're spending all this money per student. We need to start helping those students in those subgroups more. That's part of your equity. And I hope I haven't been here for a while, I'm hoping that you have a plan to do that, because if that happens, then what do they call it? Everything rises, right? Okay.
Thank you, Doral.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned at 7:32 PM.